There's a conversation happening about you at work. Not with you, but about you. In promotion discussions, in succession planning meetings, in a conversation between a senior leader and HR after a review. And the brutal truth is that what gets said in those rooms has almost nothing to do with how hard you work. And I know because I spent more than 2 decades inside those conversations. I was the person running many of those discussions. And I've watched talented people get passed over, not because they weren't good, but because the people making the decisions didn't see them the way that they thought they were being seen. Here's the mistake most high performers make. They optimize for being busy. Full calendar, instant replies, always available, always involved. And from the outside, it looks really impressive. But behind closed doors, inside those promotion conversations, that sort of behavior is actually seen very differently. And if you've ever sat in a meeting where someone more junior perhaps got the opportunity that you'd been working towards, someone you genuinely thought was less ready than you, this is probably why. Not because the system is unfair, not because you weren't good enough, but because somewhere in a room that you weren't in, the conversation about that other person went differently to the conversation about you. And that can be a hard thing to hear, but it's also the most useful thing that I can tell you. Because nobody gets promoted just for being the best person at their current level. They get promoted when leadership can already see them operating at the next level. And some of the most capable professionals never realize that those two things are actually very different. When someone's name comes up in a discussion about promotion, the conversation usually goes one of 2 ways. The first way sounds like this. He's a great guy, you can always rely on him, clients love him, always delivers. And then there's usually a bit of a pause, and someone will ask, so what are we thinking for this person? And that pause tells you everything, because nobody in the room has a clear story about where that person is going. They only see them in their current role. Now, if you compare that with the second version, so this may go something like, she's already shaping how we approach mid-market clients, she's really pushing my thinking on our digital strategy, and I think she's already operating at least 1 level up already. Notice the difference. In the second version, the person is already known for something specific. The other people in the room don't have to guess this person's trajectory. The narrative already exists, and that is incredibly powerful. And that narrative doesn't happen by accident. Those people weren't necessarily smarter or more experienced, but what they've done, usually deliberately, is they've made it easy for leadership to tell a story about them, a direction, a reason to think of them differently. And that's what we're going to build for you. Now, here's the question that often sits underneath most promotion conversations. It's not always explicit, but it's always there. And the question is, what would actually break if this person disappeared for a month? Not what would slow down, not what would be inconvenient, but what would actually break? And when people answer that honestly, something interesting happens. If the answer is just lots of operational things won't happen, so client calls they manage, processes they run, decisions that they currently make, that tells leadership something important. It tells them that you're essential to how things run today, but maybe not essential to where things are going tomorrow. And the people who get promoted are usually the ones where the answer sounds quite different. So something like, if she disappeared, we'd lose our momentum on that new initiative, or he's the one shaping the future direction of that area, or she's the one who's built those client relationships. The question for you is, which category are you in right now? And if you don't know, the honest answer is probably in your calendar. So here's a practical way to see where you actually sit right now. Go and open your calendar for the last 4 weeks and go through every significant meeting or block of time and sort them into 2 categories. Green means you are doing something that shapes where things are going. Perhaps it's a conversation with a senior leader about the future of your area, or it's time that you spent thinking about a problem that the business hasn't solved yet. Maybe it was a meeting where you were influencing a decision, not just reporting on one. Your decisions, your judgment, if they hadn't happened, the organization would have had a slightly worse future. So those are your green categories. Next is the red category, and red means you were keeping things running. So a status update meeting, perhaps reviewing some work before it went out, answering questions that maybe could have been answered by someone else. Perhaps you're sitting in a meeting because you've always sat in that meeting. Your red category items are anything where, if you hadn't been there, the same outcome would have most likely happened anyway. And most people who do this exercise get a bit of a shock because your calendar tells the truth about where your effort is actually going. It doesn't matter how busy you've been, it matters what you've actually been doing. So if your calendar is 90% red, you're delivering brilliantly at your current level, but that's the ceiling. It's not the ladder for you. Now, the goal isn't to eliminate the red, that's not realistic, but the goal is to start deliberately carving out green time. So once you've done this exercise, ask yourself, where in your calendar could you reclaim even just 20% for green? And what would you need to stop doing, or maybe delegate, or simply attend less to make that possible for you? Now, you shouldn't try to overhaul everything at once because you'll probably drop the ball on something important. But you should look at which one meeting you can stop going to, or what one recurring decision you can delegate, or maybe there's 1 hour a week of protected time for something forward-looking. That's how the shift will start for you. Okay, so now you know what the conversations in those rooms cover, and you know how to test where your time is actually going. But here's the part that most people never get told. This is the one thing that changes how leadership sees you. And it's very simple. You become known for something, not just being competent or reliable, that's pretty much a given, but being known for a point of view, known for a direction, maybe known for leading something that's slightly beyond your current role. The people who get promoted aren't necessarily the hardest workers, but instead they're often the ones who have made it easy for leadership to imagine them in the next role because they're already behaving like someone who belongs there. And really importantly, this doesn't mean relentless self-promotion. That's just annoying. But what it does mean is having opinions about where your area is going, asking more strategic questions, not just operational ones, and volunteering for things that sit slightly above your remit, showing how you think, not just how you execute. So let me give you an example of this. There's a difference between sitting in a meeting and saying something like, the client feedback on this project was mixed, and saying, the client feedback on this project was mixed, and I think it points to a broader issue with how we're scoping work at this stage. Here's what I think we should do differently. Same meeting, same information, but one of those responses is operational, and the other is strategic. The first tells people that you're on top of your current role, which is obviously good, but the second version tells the room that you're thinking like someone a level above it. And you can see that these things don't actually require that much difference, but they do require you to consistently show up with a perspective, not just a report. And done consistently, that creates a signal to senior leadership. And once that signal exists, the conversation about you changes, your name comes up, and there's already a clear narrative. Leadership doesn't have to construct a story about you because you've already given them one. Now, some people hear this and think, isn't that just office politics? And I don't see it that way. There's a bad view that some people have about office politics, that it's just about manipulation. And that's not what we're doing here. This is about translation. You already have value, and what you're doing here is translating it so leadership can actually see it. And the second objection I sometimes hear is that I don't have time for any of this. Yep, which might be true. We're all busy, right? But when people look honestly at their calendar, which is exactly what that exercise I just gave you is for, they often discover something that's pretty uncomfortable, that they've spent years becoming brilliant at the level they're already at, but they've never deliberately created space to operate at the next level. And as I said earlier, you don't need to change everything. Sometimes it's just 10 to 20% of how you spend your time, maybe just an hour a day. And the third thing I hear, and this one's worth addressing directly, is that I don't want to change who I am. And I completely understand that, and I want to be clear, nothing that I've described here requires you to become someone different. The people who succeed at this aren't the ones who reinvent themselves, they're actually the ones who let more of who they are become visible. Their real thinking, their genuine perspective, their actual view on where things should go. So this isn't about changing who you are. It's about stopping the habit of hiding the best parts of you. If this resonates, if you're someone who knows you're capable of more and you're trying to understand how the game actually works at this level, I write about how to succeed at work every week in my newsletter. The real dynamics behind careers, the conversations that shape promotions, and the frameworks that I use with senior professionals who are navigating exactly these situations. The link is in the description. But here's the thing, knowing how these conversations work is only useful if your working environment is actually giving you a fair shot. And some of the professionals I work with eventually realize that it isn't, that some of what they've been experiencing isn't a career problem, it's actually a company culture problem. So watch this video next, where I walk you through the 7 signs that your employer may actually be manipulating you. Because if any of them feel familiar, that changes your strategy entirely. I'll see you there. And if you found this useful, make sure you give the video a like, maybe even a comment, and subscribe to my channel. That way you're much more likely to see more of my future videos. Because let's face it, you're unlikely to go and remember my name and type it into the search bar in YouTube.